been helping Malaysian and other Southeast Asian to speak better English, and through training thousands of Southeast Asians, I've discovered a very surprising truth. I've discovered that how well somebody communicates in English actually has very little to do with their English level. It has a lot to do with their attitude toward English. There are people out there who have a very low English level and they can communicate very well. One of them that I remember was a student, a participant of mine named Faisal. He was a factory supervisor, English level very low. But this guy could just sit and listen to anybody very calmly, clearly, and then he could respond. Absolutely express his thoughts beautifully at a very low level of English. So today I want to share with you what is so different about people like Faisal, how do they do it, and second of all, why is this so important not only to you but to your children, to your community, and to the future of Malaysia. And the third of all, what's one thing you can do starting today if you want to speak with that calm, clear confidence and people like Faisal have? First of all, what is so different? How do people like Faisal do it? To answer that question, I'm going to take you back about 10 years, okay? I was training staff at that time, and my daughter then that time was taking piano lessons, and I started to notice two really strong similarities between my daughter's attitude or thinking towards playing the piano and a lot of Malaysians thinking or attitude toward English. First of all, I should tell you my daughter absolutely hated piano. Hated lessons, hated practicing. This is my daughter practicing piano, okay? This is as good as it got. This is the real thing. And she dreaded going to piano lessons because to my daughter, going to piano lessons, she was filled with this sort of dread because it was all about not screwing up right because like a lot of piano students, to both of my daughter and her teacher, her success in piano was measured by how few mistakes she made. At the same time, I noticed that a lot of Malaysians went into English conversation with the same sort of feeling of dread. This sort of feeling that they were going to be judged by how many mistakes they were going to make and whether or not they were going to screw up. Now, the second similarity that I noticed was to do with self-imaging. My daughter, she knew that what good piano sounded like, right? Because we've all heard good piano, and she knew what her level was, and she knew how long she'd have to play for to play like that. And a lot of Malaysian, I noticed that this idea of what good proper English is supposed to sound like and what their English sounds like and how far they would have to go to get there. And they just also felt like they were like my daughter, just bad piano player and bad English speaker, right? My English not so good lah, cannot, sorry, yeah, cannot, So I could see the similarities, but I still couldn't figure out. Okay, what is it about these people like Faisal that are so different that can just do it smoothly, calmly, with confidence? One day I discovered that answer, and I discovered it quiet by change. It was the day when my computer broke down, and I had to go to a cyber cafe. Okay, it was my first time. And I discovered cyber cafes are just disgusting places, okay? They are really gross. They are smelly and they're filled with boys. And they're all playing noisy, violent games. They just disgusting place. But I had to go there. So I sat guy next to me. Now this guy is playing this game that is basically it's like shooting people until they die, and that's it. That's the game, right? I'm noticing that this guy is not very good. In fact, he's terrible, right? Because I'm looking and I'm seeing like a lot of shooting and not much dying. What really interested me was behind this lousy player were three of his friends, sort of standing there watching him play. What I really noticed was even though this guy was terrible, even though his friends were watching him, there was no embarrassment. There was no feeling of being judged. There was no shyness. In fact, quite the opposite. This guy totally focused on the bad guy's smile on his face. All he can think about is killing this guy's right, and I'm watching him. I suddenly realized this is it. This is the same attitude that people like Faisal have when they speak in English. Just like this guy, when Faisal goes into an English conversation, he doesn't feel judged. He is entirely focused on the person that he's speaking to and the result he wants to get. He's not self-awareness, no thoughts about his own mistakes. I want to share with you a real true example to paint a picture of somebody who speaks English like they are playing piano and some who speak English like they are just playing a computer game. And this is a true story. It happened to me. A while ago, I was in pharmacy. I had to buy Omega. My doctor said I should get Omega, and I go to the shelf. There's ton of Omega. There's Omega that's high in DHA, Omega that high in EPA, and I don't know which one to buy. Now, the sales rep happened to be there, and I saw she's like well-dressed professional woman, and I one offered to her, and I see this look as she sees me. This short, as look I recognize very well. His eyes go all wide, a sort of that panic. Oh my God, I've got to speak to a native speaker. She's going to judge me and notice my mistakes. I go to her and explain my situation, which oh my God do I get? And she starts explaining to me everything about DHA and EPA you could possibly imagine. She speaks very quickly, goes all around in circles, and when she finished, no idea what to buy. So I turned to go in the behind the counter. Now the girl behind counter, I heard her before. Her English is very low, but when I walked over to her, this girl, there's no fear. In fact, she's just looking at me. You look that look like yeah. Okay, so how? Yeah, I've been in Malaysia a long time, so I go up to her and I explained the problem EPA and DHA. She looked at me. She says, okay, yeah, EPA for heart, DHA for brain. Your heart okay or not? So I said, yeah, I said, my heart is really, I think it's pretty good. She says, your brain okay or not? I said, no, my brain is not as good as it used to be. She looks and says, okay lah, you take Omega DHA. Problem solved, right? So we've got two different kinds of communicators. We've got the one who's got a high level but totally focused on herself and getting it right, and therefore very ineffective. We've got another one, low level, totally focused on the person she's talking to and getting result effective. And therein lies a difference. Now, why is this distinction so important, not just to you, to your children, but to the future of Malaysia and countries like Malaysia? And to answer that, let's take a look at who actually is speaking English in the world today, okay? So if you look at all of the English conversation in the whole world taking place right now on the communication are native speaker to native speaker. My language anymore, this is language belong to you. It's not an art to be mastered, it's just a tool to use to get a result. And I want to give you a real life example of what English today in the world. Real English today. This is another true story. I was at a barbecue a little while ago. This was a barbecue for engineers from all over the world, and they were making hot dogs. Some of the hot dogs were regular hot dogs, and some were this cheese hot dogs, with the cheese in the middle. A French engineer is cooking the hot dogs, and he turns to this Korean engineers and he says, "Would you like a hot dog?" And the Korean guy says, "Yes, please." He says, "Do you want the cheese?" And the Korean guy looked around the table. He says, "I no see cheese." The French guy says, "The hot dog is contain the cheese." The Korean guy doesn't understand him right, so the French engineers tries again. The hot dog is making problem with the cheese. The Korean guy still doesn't understand. He tries again. He says, "The hot dog is coming from, no, the cheese is coming from the hot dog." Korean guy cannot understand. Now there's a Japanese engineer who's been listening to this conversation, turns to the Korean engineer and he says, "Cheese, eat it brother." You understand, okay? Everybody understands. So this is what English is today. It's just a tool to play around it to get a result, like a computer game. Now the challenge is that we know in school all around the world, English is not really being taught like it's a tool to play with. It's still being taught like it's an art to master, and students are judged more on correctness than on clarity. Some of you might remember the odd comprehension exam in school. Does everybody remember in school when you get a question about a text that you read? You have to read through some text, right? And then answer a question to show that you understood the text. This may have happened to you that you showed you understood the text, but you got a big X because you made a little grammar mistake. This, like these students clearly understood paragraph words, but no, not correct, because he left the letter N on of the word and fragment. But in the real world, what would matter? In the real world, what would matter is, did you understand the email, or did you understand your customer so that you can go ahead and take action? Now, the problem that I see here over and over is that people take the attitude they develop about English in school and they bring it into their adult life and into their work. And if you are in stressful situation and you're having a conversation and you're trying to give a result to someone and say it correctly, your brain multitasks. It cannot do two things at once. And what I see is the brain just shutting down, and you may recognize these three symptoms of the brain shutting down. The first one is that your listening goes. Someone is talking to you and you're busy thinking about how you're going to respond and express yourself correctly. And you don't actually hear what the other person says. And I can see a lot of nodding in the audience. The second thing to go is your speaking. Your mind sort of shut down, and that vocabulary you know just disappears, and the word don't come out. The third thing to go is your confidence. The worst thing about this is you may only be unconfident because you cannot express yourself clearly, but to the person talking to you, they might misunderstand this as a lack of confidence in your ability to do the job to perform. If you want to speak English like Faisal with confidence, here's the one thing that you can do. When you speak, don't focus on yourself. Focus on the other person and the result you want to achieve. Imagine a next generation of Malaysians all with that wonderful confidence and communication that Faisal has at any level of English. Because let's remember that English today is not an art to be mastered, it's just a tool to use to get a result.